Welcome to Sino-Warfare with Ralph D. Sawyer.
Swin's 5 categories essentially establish the components, as well as the core structure of Chinese intelligence operations. However, Warring States military writers who followed, especially the author of the 6 Secret Teachings, identify operatives who are tasked with various activities, ranging from passive collection, and who thus essentially function like Swin's living spies, to active efforts that range from disinformation through assassination, both of which, of course, appear in Swin's employing spies. Thus, they not only continue the chapter's activist impulse, but also expand the range of activities to encompass estrangement and other subversive measures. The King's Wings, a chapter found in the 6 Secret Teachings, attributed to the great Zhou strategist known as the Tai Gong, but probably composed in the 4th or 3rd century, outlines the first known staff structure. 2 specialized officials have intelligence-gathering responsibilities. The 7 so-called ears and eyes are primarily internally oriented because they are, quote, responsible for going about everywhere, listening to what the people are saying, discerning changes, and observing the officers in all 4 directions and the army's true situation. Now, in contrast, the 8 roving officers are expected to act outside the state because they are, quote, responsible for spying on the enemy's licentiousness and observing their changes, manipulating their emotions, and observing the enemy's thoughts in order to act as spies. Now, thereafter in the Tang, Li Jing, another of the Art of War's 10 important commentators, and the author of the important Li Jing, resurrected the old Zhou term of Xingrun, which by this time had come to simply mean traveler, but perhaps roving agent in this context. His Xingrun discusses how to neutralize foreign spies. Quote, we can capitalize upon the men dispatched by the enemy to observe our defects by offering them higher ranks and making their salaries more generous. Thereafter, investigate their words and compare them with actuality. If they prove accurate, you can employ them. If specious, you can execute them. Employ them as local guides. Now, although he terms them local guides, showing the somewhat plasticity of these terms, they are really turned agents in Swin's conception. In the early Tang, the great strategist and surpassing military commander Li Jing, who was instrumental in overthrowing the Sui dynasty and subjugating the realm, esteemed intelligence. He not only discussed the contributions spies make, but also offered a 5-category classification similar to Swin's.
Those who rely on local connections to submerge themselves, observe and investigate, and report on everything they have learned. Those who take advantage of the enemy's closely trusted people to deliberately leak false information for transmission to them. Those who rely upon their emissaries to twist affairs about in return. Worthy and talented individuals who are dispatched to discover the enemy's inclinations and vacuities and return to discuss them. And those who are accused of fabricated offenses, so they might subtly leak out false reports and specious plans, and then perish because of the reports to the enemy.
Although the nature of their efforts evolved with the times, later writers such as Zhu Fengjia, who penned the last focal contemplation of spycraft in Chinese history, the Book of Spies, perceived an essential coherence with Swin's 5.
The 5 agents discussed in the Li Gongbing Fa and in Swin's are like inner and outer. The first relies upon townspeople, Swin's villa agents. The second relies upon political hostages, Swin's internal agents. The third relies on the enemy's emissaries, Swin's turned agents. The fourth relies on selecting the worthy and capable, Swin's living spies. And the fifth relies on delaying the punishment of offenders, Swin's dead agents.
Unfortunately, a rather lengthy discussion would be needed to untangle the discrepancies, including Zhu's idea of using hostages and what should be termed expendable spies. If you're interested, you'll find them discussed in my translation of the Book of Spies. However, a couple of comments on Li Jing's categories might not be amiss. Obviously, those who submerge themselves, and the worthy and talented, they both fall into the category of Swinz's living spies. The individuals who exploit local disaffection to leak false information, they're really disinformation officers who differ from Swinz's expendable spies. Emissaries who have been misled fall within Swinz's category of turned agents, though in this case they are unwitting participants who have been deceived rather than bribed. And finally, Li Jing's last category reflects the use of the ploy of suffering flesh, or kuroji, which is deliberately disgracing or punishing someone to establish their credibility as wrong defectors, and then dispatching them with false information. Essentially just what King Tang of the Shang did with Yi Yin. Now, if no others, at the beginning of the Tang, everyone would have been familiar with Huang Kai's successful deception of Cao Cao, which resulted in a debacle at Red Cliffs that quashed the great general's ambition to rule the realm. His dreams perished with his mighty armada, just as seen in the movie. In the late Ming, Jie Xuan, an innovative military thinker and author of the 100 Tactical Terms, expanded the categories to 16. In his view, agents, normally human actors, should equally encompass techniques and inanimate objects. Now, this poses a bit of a problem for translating Jian. A forged letter can obviously be a disinformation agent, though the term might best be understood as agency through or clandestine action through. Even more innovative, in his 100 Tactical Terms, he links spy work and the unorthodox. Quote, "Those who enter the enemy and implement unorthodox measures are termed agents." Jie characterizes their objectives in highly activist terms. Agents strike fear in the enemy's general staff, slay the enemy's beloved generals, and cause chaos in the enemy's estimates and strategies. So rather than confined to simply gathering information, they clearly are expected to undertake subversive measures, including spreading disinformation and assassination. The non-human means include forged letters, rumors, prophetic verses, songs, and gifts, including to affect the women's quarters, and finally physical coercion, one of the rare times it's mentioned in a military text, though the historical writings show it was frequently employed. Now, those that involve real people are described as follows.
Living agents are spies who are dispatched and return. Expendable agents enter enemy territory but do not return. Allowing the enemy's agents to return and report is clandestine action through enemy agents. To form connections with subordinates in partisan cliques and hamlets is clandestine action through local agents. To influence people through their friends is clandestine action through friends. Bribes that penetrate the women's quarters is clandestine action through women. Exploiting personal friendship is clandestine action through goodwill. And inflicting bodily harm to implement plans is clandestine action through awesomeness.
Jie's contemplation of agent categories in what has to be considered China's most sophisticated military treatise not only thus differs from earlier writers, but is also the most thoughtful. His comment on the difficulty of employing spies is well worth noting. Quote, "Clandestine activities aren't difficult, but employing men is. Thus, employing agents is more difficult than employing the army." He concludes his entry with 12 examples before adding another vital distinction, living and dead. He says, living and dead are the general names for agents. Employing them through benevolence or fear is subtle. Enumerating the 12 types of agents seen in the examples, distinguishing them as living or dead, and completing their categorization by indicating whether they were employed through benevolence or fear is too complex to harmonize. Thus, Swinz's Art of War set up a single chapter to distinguish the 5 types of agents. The final work in the tradition, Zhu Fengjia's seminal contemplation of spycraft, Jianshu, or Book of Spies as I translate it, consists of an extensive examination of intelligence theory and practice that is augmented by 53 historical exemplifications. Many more are also integrated into his theoretical analysis. The result is a window on the Chinese intelligence tradition right up until its writing in 1855, a half-century before the collapse of the Qing, a conquest dynasty that controlled China for some 3 centuries. While Zhu focuses on Sunzi's employing spies and discusses Li Jing's 5 categories extensively, he reorients the categories slightly, so expendable agents are invariably condemned criminals, and political hostages are internal spies, in itself a puzzling development. Moreover, for Zhu, turned agents have the widest possible scope, simply being anyone who returns to the enemy with misinformation, willingly or not, with no need to ever have been a conscious enemy agent. But the distinguishing feature of his study is an ongoing discussion of what are usually termed estrangement agents. Li Jing. Zhu initiates his study of Li Jing by citing Li Jing's recognition of their importance before going on to dissect the objectives. Quote, "Victory in battle can be sought from heaven and earth, but it relies upon men for completion. When I study how the ancients employed agents, some estranged rulers, others their confidants, the capable, assistants, allies, staff, or the persuaders for the horizontal and vertical alliances." With the inclusion of extensive historical examples in both the theoretical and exemplification sections, his study reveals how intensively estrangement agents were employed throughout Chinese history. As previously noted, in most cases the category of Li Jing can be subsumed by one of Sunzi's classic categories, for they were often internal spies and turned agents assigned a task that changed their mission objective, but not the thrust of disinformation and manipulation. The ploy's successful implementation negated Yueri's great achievement in conquering nearly all of Qi, brought about Zhao's defeat at the Battle of Changping, and undermined Zhao, Wei, and Qi, resulting in their collapse and subjugation at the end of the Warring States period. Tai Gong, one of Confucius' highly esteemed disciples, and then the persuaders associated with the horizontal and vertical alliances, all excelled in thwarting coalition efforts and subverting alliances by using estrangement. And in a famous precursor, Bo Pi, who secretly acted on behalf of the state of Yue, brought about Wu's extinction despite Sunzi's achievements, when he caused King Fuchai to disparage and kill Wu Zishu, even though Wu Zishu had played an instrumental role in revitalizing the state and in Wu's forceful domination of the realm. Even more important, estrangement became a core method in the systematic subversive methods that evolved in Yue at the end of the spring and autumn, and in Qin over the last half of the Warring States period, as we will discuss next time.